Do you know the exact number your life costs? Not a guess. The real one, the rent, the heat, the pills, the part they take out before the check ever reaches you? Most people don't. I didn't. Not really. Not for 41 years. And then one night I found out to the dollar because I was sitting at my own kitchen table doing sums on the back of a heating oil bill, and the sums would not come out right no matter how I moved them around. I'm Carol, 66 years old, from Lewiston, Maine, a mill town on the Androscoggin that lost its mills before I was grown and never quite got over it. I taught second grade once. 10 years of it, a long time ago, before life took the eraser to that part of the plan. I mention the teaching because it matters to how my head works. I count. I've always counted. Give me a room full of children, and I'll tell you how many without looking twice. Give me a household budget, and I'll carry it in my head like a hymn. So there I was that night with the oil bill, and here is what the counting said. My husband had left. After 41 years, he left, and I'm not going to make him a villain for you, because that isn't what this is. And anyway, the truth is quieter and worse than a villain. Somewhere along the way, I had folded myself up so small inside that marriage that when he took his half and went, I looked around and I could not find the other half. It wasn't there. I had spent so long being somebody's wife that I'd misplaced the woman who used to count children. The lawyer split what there was, which wasn't much, and what landed on me, going forward, was this. Social Security, about $1,600 a month. That's it. That's the whole orchestra. No pension. I'd left teaching when the children came and we moved for his job, and I never got back to a real classroom, so the pension that would have been my floor got up and walked out the door with the rest of it. And out of that $1,600, before I ever saw a nickel, Medicare took $203 a month for Part B. You keep Part B, or they punish you later for dropping it, so you keep it. $203. Gone off the top, like a tithe to a church I wasn't sure I still believed in. Then the oil bill in my hand, then the rent, because the house went in the split too. Then everything else a body needs so as not to be cold and not be hungry in a state that is very good at being cold. I did the sums 3 times. A teacher checks her work, and 3 times the same answer came up, and the answer was no, not tight, not will manage, no. There was no version of staying in Maine where the number at the bottom of that envelope wasn't red. I would spend down my little cushion about $18,000, the whole of what I had left in the world, and then I would be a 66-year-old woman with no cushion and no husband and a heating bill that ate her alive every January. I want to stop right here and say something to whoever's listening who knows this exact feeling, because I think some of you do. Maybe you're a woman, and it happened to you the way it happened to me late, out of nowhere, after you'd already given the best years to somebody else's life. Maybe you're sitting about where I was sitting, with your own version of that envelope. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't hurt. It hurts. There's a particular shame to being 66 and broke and starting over, and nobody prints that one on a greeting card. But I'll tell you what the counting also told me once I'd stopped crying long enough to hear it. It said, the number is the number. You cannot argue a number into being kind, but you can move to where the number means something different. And I know how that sounds like something a woman says to herself at 2 a.m. to keep from coming apart. I thought so too. I thought it was foolishness. I had a whole box of my mother's recipes on the counter that I couldn't cook, and a house too quiet to think in. And here I was entertaining a 2 a.m. notion. I was wrong about the foolishness, as it turned out. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I promised I'd tell this in order, the way I'd teach it, start at the beginning, show your work, no skipping ahead to the answer. So, the beginning is a kitchen table in Lewiston, an oil bill covered in my own cramped handwriting, and a woman who had just discovered, at 66, the exact number her life cost, and that she could not pay it. That's where this starts. I didn't know yet that the same arithmetic drowning me in Maine would, half a year later and 8,000 miles away, turn out to be the very thing that set me free. That night I didn't know anything except that the sums wouldn't come out right. I put the pencil down. I made a cup of tea I didn't drink, and I sat in a house that was too quiet, in a life that had gotten too small, and I thought, all right, Carol, all right then. What now? The nights were the worst of it. You'd think a person tired down to the bone would sleep, but grief doesn't work that way. I'd lie there in the dark on my side of a bed that was now the whole bed, and my mind would run the numbers again like a hamster on a wheel. 1,600, take away 203, take away rent, take away oil, take away, and somewhere around 3 in the morning, I'd give it up and carry my tea and my phone into the front room. That's where I found them, the women. It was one of those Facebook groups I joined at half by accident, the way you do, clicking something a cousin shared. Single Women Over 60, it was called, more or less. I figured it would be recipes and grandbaby pictures and somebody selling essential oils. Some of it was. But then I started actually reading, and I realized a good half of these women were writing in from places I'd only ever seen on a map. Portugal, Mexico, Ecuador, and Thailand, a lot of them, Thailand. They weren't rich. That's what caught me. These weren't women with yachts. These were nurses and secretaries and one gal who'd driven a school bus for 26 years, all of them my age or older, all of them writing about their days like their days were good, widowed, divorced, never married, on their own, same as me, and not scraping by living. There was one in particular. She was up north, she said, in a city called Chiang, not Chiang Mai, the famous one, but the quieter one past it, up near the mountains where the tea grows. And one night she did the thing that changed my life, though neither of us knew it. She posted her budget, her actual, line by line, this is what I spend budget for a whole month. Now, you have to understand what a document like that does to a woman like me. Other people scrolled right past it. I sat up. Rent, she'd written. Groceries. The electric with the air conditioning running. Her phone. A little motorbike she got around on. Eating out, and she ate out plenty, from the sound of it. Add it all up, and she was living, comfortably, on something right around $1,100 a month. 1,100, everything in. I did what I do. I checked her arithmetic. I sat there at 3 in the morning with my cold tea, and I went down her list line by line, converting her baht to dollars in my head. Their money runs about 33 to the dollar. I learned that quick, and I checked every figure against what I could find, and I could not make it wrong. It came out. It actually came out. Here was a woman my age spending $1,100 a month and calling it comfortable, and here was I, drowning at home on 1,600, and the gap between those two numbers was the whole gap between red ink and black. And something happened in me that hadn't happened in a while. The teacher woke up. The part of me that used to stand at a chalkboard and say, all right, class, let's work this one out together. She opened one eye. I didn't book a flight. I want to be clear about that, because I think people hear a story like mine and picture some brave, grand gesture, a woman flinging her wedding ring in the ocean and buying a one-way ticket. That was not me. That has never been me. I was a woman who'd just lost her whole margin for error, and you do not gamble your last $18,000 on a feeling. So I did the careful thing. I decided to go and see. 2 weeks, a scouting trip, like a field trip, except I was the teacher and the whole class both. I'd go, I'd look with my own eyes, I'd price everything myself, and if it turned out to be a fairy tale, I'd come home and figure out something else. But I would know. I told my daughter first. That was a phone call. She's a good girl. My Rachel groaned. 2 little ones of her own down in Portland, and she went quiet for a second, and then she said, "Mom, Thailand? You don't even like new restaurants. You order the same thing at the diner every single time." And she wasn't wrong. That was the thing. She wasn't wrong about the woman I'd been. I said, "I know it, honey. That's rather the point." She didn't understand, not then. She was scared, and underneath the scared, she was doing what we all do, which is picture her mother helpless in a place with no one to call. I understood it. I'd have felt the same in her shoes. But I also heard, underneath my own voice on that call, something I hadn't heard come out of my mouth in a long, long while. I heard a woman making a decision, her own decision, nobody else's. I booked the 2 weeks the next morning, and I'll tell you, the fear didn't leave. The fear came right along with me, packed itself into the carry-on. But for the first time since the night of the oil bill, it wasn't the only thing in the suitcase. The heat hits you before anything else. They open the airplane door and Thailand walks right in this thick, wet, warm bath air that wraps around you. And for a Maine woman who'd been cold since October, I'm not too proud to say my whole body just exhaled. I stood on the jet bridge like a fool with my eyes closed. Somebody behind me said, "Excuse me, ma'am," and I shuffled along. I'd flown into Chiang on a little plane up from Bangkok, and by the time I got into town it was night, and the first thing I saw, the very first thing, was the clock tower. I have to describe this for you because a photograph doesn't do it. Right in the middle of the city, there's this great golden clock tower, ornate as a wedding cake, and every night on the hour it lights up and changes colors, gold to pink to blue, and a little song plays. Tourists gather, old Thai couples sit on the benches, and I stood there my first night, jet-lagged and terrified, and 8,000 miles from my empty house, watching a golden clock turn blue, and I laughed out loud. I don't know why. It was just so far from an oil bill. I gave myself 2 weeks, and I ran them like a woman on a mission, because I was one. Every morning I'd walk. I'd go down to the market, the big municipal one, Cad Luang, where the locals actually shop, and I would price things. That's the teacher again, the counter. I'd stand at a stall with mangoes stacked up like cannonballs and work out what a whole week of eating cost, and then do it again at the next stall to check myself. And the numbers, Lord, the numbers. A whole bag of vegetables, more than I could carry, for what a single sad tomato cost me back at the store in Maine. A plate of cow swai, that's the northern one, egg noodles in a coconut curry with a crispy nest on top, and a wedge of lime for a little under $2. I ate it standing up the first time, at a plastic table on a plastic stool, sweating, and I nearly cried into the bowl. It was that good and it was that cheap, and both of those facts undid me a little. I made myself try everything. Nam jiao, their local soup up there, tomatoes and pork and rice noodles, tangy and deep, that became my supper, more nights than not. Sai ua, the herb sausage, coiled up and grilled over coals. Sticky rice you pinch up with your fingers. And the coffee, nobody warns you about the coffee. They grow it right up in those hills. Doi Chiang, they call it, some of the best I've had in my life, for about $1 a cup, handed to me by a young fellow who drew a little leaf in the foam. I rode my first songthieu and made a proper hash of it. That's the shared truck, a pickup with 2 benches in the back and a roof over them, runs a route like a bus, only you flag it down and press a buzzer and pay a few baht when you climb out. I got on the wrong one, naturally, and ended up out by the university with no notion where I was. A Thai grandmother about my own age took one look at my face, patted the bench beside her, and sorted me out with hand signals and a kind of fierce grandmotherly patience. Neither of us had a single word of the other's language. We managed just fine. And I went to the White Temple Wat Rong Kun. You may have seen the pictures. It's the famous one just south of town, all white, and set with mirrored glass, so it gleams like something out of a dream or a fever. I went at opening, before the tour buses, when the light was still soft. And I'm not a woman who talks easy about God. The Buddhists have their own way of it here. The monks and the almsgiving and the little bows, the why they call it. But I stood on that white bridge in the early quiet, and something in my chest that had been clenched up tight since Maine just loosened. I can't put it better than that. I didn't have a revelation. I just breathed, all the way down, for the first time in months. By the end of the 2 weeks, I had a notebook, a real one, paper, because I don't trust my sums to a telephone, and in it, in my own handwriting, was a whole life priced right out. A decent little apartment, 1 bedroom, 10,000 baht a month, call it $300. Food, if I cooked and ate out both, maybe 12,000 baht. The electric with the air conditioning, a phone, getting around. I added it and re-added it, and it landed right around 37,000 baht a month, a little over $1,100, everything in. $1,100, and my check was 1,600. I sat in my rented room the last night, the fan going, the notebook open on my knees, and I did the subtraction one more time, slow, out loud, the way I'd make a child do it. 1,600. Take away the 203 that Medicare keeps. Take away the 1,100 to live. And there was money left. There was money left over at the end. Not a fortune, but black ink. Black ink. For the first time since the night of that envelope. I didn't decide anything that night. I'd made myself promise I wouldn't. But I closed the notebook, and I lay in the dark listening to a city I couldn't understand one word of, and I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. I felt like maybe I wasn't finished after all. Careful people are not brave, exactly. I want to say that plainly, because women have written to me since as if I'd done something daring, and I didn't. Daring would have been staying. Daring would have been spending my last $18,000 slowly, month by month, in a cold house, waiting on a rescue that wasn't coming. What I did was the opposite of daring. I did it slow, and I did it right. And doing it right is its own kind of nerve. I flew home to Maine to decide. That mattered to me not to decide in the heat of the place, all cow swai and golden clock towers, but back in the gray, in my own head, where I could be honest with myself. And here's a thing that still makes me laugh a little sideways. People asked what I'd sell to go. Sell. Honey, I had nothing to sell. That was the whole point of me. No house it went in the split. No second car. A 10-year-old Corolla. A bed. My mother's recipe box that I can't cook half of, and a storage unit's worth of things I discovered I did not miss across 2 whole weeks. There's a strange freedom in being cleaned out. When you've got almost nothing, you've got almost nothing left to lose. Rachel drove up from Portland. She'd been quiet on the phone for weeks, and I braced for a fight, and instead she sat down at my kitchen table, the same table, the oil bill table, and she cried. And then she said, "Show me." So I got the notebook, and I walked my daughter through it the way I'd walk a parent through a report card. Here's the income. Here's what it costs to live here. Here's the red. Here's what it costs to live there. Here's the black. And I watched her face do the very arithmetic her mother had already done a dozen times, and I watched her get it. She didn't get it happily, let me be honest. She said, "Who's going to take care of you over there?" And I said, "Baby, nobody's taking care of me here either. I'm just cold and broke while they don't." That landed harder than I'd meant it to. But it was true, and she knew it was true. And in the end, she drove me to the airport herself. She held on a beat too long at the curb. I won't forget it. Back in Chiang Rai, I still didn't sign a thing. This is the part I'm proudest of, so bear with an old teacher. I rented for 1 month first. 1 month, a test, before any lease, because a scouting trip shows you the honeymoon, and a month shows you the marriage. I wanted to see the place on an ordinary Wednesday. I wanted to know if the magic held when I was tired and my stomach was off and I missed my grandbabies. I gave it a month to disappoint me. It didn't. It had its hard days. I'll get to those. I promised you honest, but the bones of it held. Two things I had to sort, and I sorted them careful. The first was getting around, and that meant a motorbike, and I want you to know I was terrified. 66 years old, and I bought a little used motorbike for about 33,000 baht, $1,000, and I wobbled around an empty temple parking lot at dawn for the better part of a week like a 12-year-old, until one morning I just rode down to the market and back. I sat at a red light next to a monk on a scooter and a whole family of four stacked on another one, and I thought, well, Carol, look at you. The second thing was the visa, and this is where careful really earns its keep, so listen close. I'm 66, so the route that made sense for me is the one they call the in-country Nano. You go over on a tourist entry and you convert it inside Thailand to a retirement extension. For folks over 60, it's the sensible road. It doesn't tangle you up in the mandatory health insurance the other visa demands. But you have to show them the money. And here's where my thin little life got complicated. They want to see either 800,000 baht sitting in a Thai bank that's about $24,000 or income of 65,000 baht a month, which is close to $2,000. And I want you to notice something. I didn't have either one. My savings were 18,000, not 24, and my check was 1,600, not 2,000. I missed both bars. So I did it the combination way. There's a method where you put part of it in the bank and count part of it as income, and together they clear the line. I found a proper visa agent, a real office, real reviews, the whole thing, not some fellow holding court in a bar, and I paid them to walk me through it and get every paper right, because the one thing you do not do is get cute with immigration in a country that isn't yours. I moved a chunk of my savings into a Thai bank, let it sit the way they require, combined it with my Social Security, and it cleared, and I kept a cushion back, always a cushion. My mother taught me that in a mill town, and it turns out the lesson travels. Then, and only then, I signed a year's lease. 10,000 baht a month, $300, first and last down. And I sat on the floor of my empty little apartment that first night. I hadn't so much as bought a chair yet, and I opened the notebook and wrote it out clean, one more time, in ink. Income, 1,600. Medicare, take away 203. Living, about 1,100. Left over, maybe $300 every single month. Money I could keep, money I could put by. I'd done it, not bravely, carefully, but I had done it. I promised you honest, so here come the hard parts, and there were real ones. Anybody who tells you they moved across the world at 66 and it was all golden clock towers is selling you something. I'm not selling you a thing. The first one came right out of the sky. They call it burning season. From about February into April, the farmers up north burn off their fields, and the forests get their fires too, and all that smoke settles down into the valleys and just sits. The famous blue sky goes the color of dishwater. The mountains I could see from my window disappeared behind a gray nothing. Some mornings you'd step outside and your eyes would sting and there'd be that campfire smell that used to mean something cozy and now just meant your lungs were paying rent. I bought an air purifier that was a line in the budget I hadn't planned on, and I ran it in the bedroom, and I stayed indoors more than I liked, and I checked the air quality on my phone every morning the way other people check the weather. That part is real. If you go north, you should know it going in. It's a few months, and then the rains come and wash the whole sky clean, and it's glorious again, but those few months are the price, and I won't pretend they aren't. The second hard part was quieter, and it cut deeper. The language. Here's the cruelty of it, for me in particular. I was a teacher. Words were my whole trade. I'd stood in front of children and shaped their mouths around sounds. I was good at it. It was the one thing I'd always been dead sure I was good at. And I came here, and Thai is tonal. The same little word means 5 different things depending on whether your voice goes up or down or holds flat, and I could not make my mouth do it. I'd practice a phrase for the market the whole way there, and I'd say it, proud as anything, and the woman at the stall would just look at me, kind but blank, because I'd sung it wrong and told her something about a horse when I meant rice. A teacher, reduced to pointing and smiling. There were afternoons that just about broke me, and there was a loneliness those first weeks I hadn't braced for. It's a particular thing, to be lonely in a crowd in a bright, loud market full of people, not one of whom knows your name. The Thai folks were never unkind, not once, but they've got a way about them they call kreng jai, a kind of considerate holding back, not wanting to impose, and at first I read it as coldness. I thought, they don't want me here. That was wrong of me, I know now. It's the opposite of coldness. But you can't know that in week 3. There was one night, I'll tell you, because I said I would. It was deep in the gray months, the air bad, and I'd had a rotten day, botched a sentence, dropped my groceries in the road, sat on my rented floor, and missed my grandbabies so hard it was a physical thing, a pull behind the ribs, and I had the airline website open on my phone. I did. I sat there with my thumb hovering over the button, a life I'd built with my own careful hands, and I nearly threw it all away to go back to a cold, empty house, because the cold, empty house was at least in English. I didn't book it, and I'll tell you what stopped me, and it isn't dramatic. I did the sums. Of course I did, it's what I am. I sat there and I made myself write out, on the back of a receipt, what actually waited for me in Maine. The red ink, the oil bill, the smallness of it. And I looked at that, and then I looked around at my little apartment with the fan going, that I could afford, that was mine, that nobody could take away in a settlement, and I put the phone down, not because I felt brave, because the arithmetic was still the arithmetic, and the arithmetic said stay. And then the small turns started, the way they do. I learned to say Sawadee ka, that's the greeting, and the ka on the end is the soft word a woman uses, and kap kun ka, thank you. Just those, said Wright, said every day. And it's a remarkable thing, what 2 words of somebody's own language will buy you when you say them like you mean them. Faces opened. There was a long-timer, an English woman named Pam, who'd been up in Chiang 15 years, and I met her at a little coffee place, and she took me under her wing the way one broad does another when she recognizes the look. She told me about kreng jai, told me it wasn't coldness, it was courtesy, and that the way in was regularity, go to the same stall, sit at the same coffee shop, let them get used to your face, and Thailand opens up slow. Don't chase it, she said, just keep showing up. So that's what I did. I picked a stall at the market, and I went every Saturday whether I needed a thing or not. Same stall, same smile. 2 words of Thai, said soft. Showing up. And I waited to see if the English woman knew what she was talking about. She knew exactly what she was talking about. It took weeks. That's the part the fairy tales skip clean over the weeks. You show up at the same stall on the same Saturday, and you buy your sticky rice and your som tam, and you say your 2 soft words, and you go home, and nothing happens. And you do it again, and nothing happens, and a small mean voice in you says, see, you fool, you don't belong here, go on home. And you show up anyway. Because the English woman told you to, and because you've nothing better to do, and because you're too stubborn and too broke to quit. And then one Saturday it happened, the smallest thing, the thing I'll remember when I've forgotten most of the rest. I came up to the stall, and before I could point, before I could butcher a single word of Thai, the woman who ran it, younger than me, quick hands, A gold tooth when she grinned she was already reaching for the sticky rice. My sticky rice, the kind I liked, set aside, she'd remembered, and she looked up at me and she said my name. Well, her version of it. Charon, she said, because the L is a hard sound for them, and she pointed at herself and said, Pang, and just like that we had each other's names. Charon and Pang, and I stood there in the middle of the Saturday walking street on Thanon Thanalai with my sticky rice in my hand, and I felt something let go in my chest that had been holding its breath since a kitchen table in Lewiston, Maine. Somebody knew my name. Somebody had saved back the thing I liked before I even asked. It's nothing. It's everything. It's the whole ball game is what it is. After that, the town got smaller in the good way, Pang at the market. The young man at the coffee place who had my doi Chiang started before I'd sat down, Pam and her circle of expat women who folded me into their Tuesday lunches, a Thai lady my own age, 2 doors down, who spoke about as much English as I spoke Thai, which is to say almost none, and who I somehow became genuine friends with anyway, the two of us getting by on hand signals and a phone translator and a great deal of laughing. And then Rachel came. My daughter flew all the way out, scared the whole flight, I'm sure to see for herself what her mother had gone and done. I met her at the little airport, and she looked at me, really looked, and I watched her clock something. I'd lost a little weight, the good way, from all the walking and the food that's actually food. I was brown from the sun, and more than that I think I was standing up straight. She told me later that's the thing that got her. You were standing up straight, Mom, she said. I hadn't seen that in years. I showed her everything. Took her up to the clock tower at night to watch it change colors. Took her to the White Temple at dawn and watched my grandbaby's mother go quiet on that white bridge the same way I had. We ate cow swai till we couldn't move. And on her last night, at the night bazaar, with a plate of mu ping between us and a band up on a little stage murdering an old song, she reached over and took my hand and she said, I get it now. I'm sorry I was scared. I get it. And that my girl getting it, that was worth more than the couple $100 I save every month. And I don't say that lightly, because I dearly love those couple $100. I should tell you about the doctoring because it's the question every sensible person asks, and because I promised honest. Routine care here is cheap and it's good. I had a nasty sinus thing in the rainy season, and I walked into a clinic with no appointment and saw a doctor inside 20 minutes, a good one, spoke English, and walked out with what I needed for about $40 all told. 40. There are proper hospitals in town, Overbrook, and a branch of Bangkok Hospital that handle the everyday just fine. But I'll give you the whole truth and not the brochure. For something big, a real emergency, you'd go down to Chiang Mai, a few hours off, or on to Bangkok itself for the biggest things. And I made a hard, honest choice. I want you to hear plainly, because it's the trade-off right at the center of my whole budget. I could not afford a full private Thai insurance policy. At 66, at my age, they run steep, and they climb higher every year. So I didn't buy one. Instead, I kept my Medicare Part B, that $203 a month I told you about, as my door home. Now hear me. Medicare does not cover a dime of my care here in Thailand, not one single baht. People get that wrong, and it's a dangerous thing to get wrong. What Medicare covers is Maine. So my plan, plain as I can lay it out, is this. The small stuff I pay for out of pocket here, cheap. And if the big frightening thing ever comes, I've got my cushion for a Thai hospital, and I've got Part B and a plane seat home. It's a gamble. I know it's a gamble. I'd rather tell you straight that it's a gamble than pretend I've got it all sewn up, because the folks who pretend are the ones who get somebody hurt. And then there was the thing I never planned, the thing that gave me back more than money ever could. Pam mentioned a temple school that wanted somebody to read English with the little ones, an afternoon a week. And I heard the word teacher, and something in me stood right up. So now, an afternoon a week, I'm a teacher again. It's a little temple school monks in saffron drifting across the yard, a room full of Thai children with enormous dark eyes and an enormous patience for a Farang lady who can't say their language but can, it turns out, still teach. I read them English. We do the sounds, same as I did with my second graders in Lewiston 40 years ago. Shape your mouth like this. Feel it right here. And they call me teacher. Teacher. The first time one little one piped it right up at me across the room, I had to turn and look out the window for a minute so a class of 6-year-olds wouldn't catch an old woman crying. Because here's what nobody tells you about being left with almost nothing. It isn't only the money that goes, it's the sense of what you're for. I'd spent so long being a wife that when the wifing ended, I genuinely did not know what I was anymore. And it turns out the thing I was, underneath all of it, the whole entire time, was a teacher. I just had to fly to the far side of the world and lose everything to find her again sitting there, waiting, the way she'd been waiting since I left the classroom for a marriage that ended up leaving me. Let me give you an ordinary day, because ordinary is the whole prize. I get up early. The heat makes early easy. Some mornings I catch the monks on their alms round, walking barefoot and silent with their bowls, while folks kneel to offer rice, and I stand back respectful and just witness it, this thing that's gone on every dawn for 1,000 years. I have my Doi Chiang coffee. I ride my little motorbike, me, on a motorbike down to the market, and Pang saves back my sticky rice and calls me Kairon. Some afternoons, the temple school. Most evenings my neighbor and I sit out and mangle each other's languages and laugh ourselves silly. Supper's a bowl of nam nyao from the lady on the corner, and at night, now and again, I'll walk down to the clock tower and watch it turn from gold to blue with the Thai families gathered around, and I'll think about a woman at a kitchen table in Maine with an oil bill in her hand, and I can hardly believe she's me. I won't lie to you and tie it up in a bow. There are trade-offs, real ones, and I'd be a fraud not to name them. I miss my grandbabies with an ache that does not quit. A video call is a blessing, and it is not a hug, and my granddaughter is losing her front teeth 8,000 miles from where I can see it. I'm still an outsider here in 100 small ways I've made my peace with. The healthcare gamble I told you about sits in the back of my mind on the bad nights. And the plain fact of having been left of being 66 and starting the whole thing over when I thought that chapter was shut for good that never entirely stopped stinging. Some mornings it's still the first thing I feel. I don't wait for it to leave anymore. I just get up and make the coffee. But here is the arithmetic. One last time, because the arithmetic is the truest thing I own. In Maine, on $1,600 a month, I was going broke and going numb, in a cold house, alone, waiting to be put somewhere. Here, on that very same 1,600, take away the 203 for Medicare, take away the 1,100 or so, it costs me to actually live. I've got money left over at the end of the month, and a motorbike, and a market where they know my name, and children who call me teacher, and a daughter who understands, and a golden clock that turns blue at night. The same $1,600. It bought me nothing at home. It bought me a whole life over here. I'm coming up on a year now. Still 66, still counting everything, still keeping my cushion some things a mill. Town breeds into you and you don't shake them, nor should you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Thailand is paradise, because it isn't, and anybody who tells you their new country is paradise has been there about a week. What I'll tell you is that it's mine. I chose it. I can afford it. And it had room for a woman the rest of the world had quietly decided was finished. If you're still with me, then maybe some of this has landed close to home. Maybe you're sitting about where I was sitting, with your own envelope, your own number that won't come out right, your own quiet that's gotten too big. So before I let you go, let me point you toward one thing, and then I'll leave you be. There's a free tool down in the description, a little kit somebody put together called the Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit. I didn't make it, and I'm not selling you a single thing, I promise you that. It's 2 pieces, really. One's an honest self-check that's every bit as willing to talk you out of a move like this as into it, because for some of you, staying put is the right answer, and you deserve to hear that straight. And the other's a budget worksheet, so you can do exactly what I did at that kitchen table. Run your own real numbers, city by city, and see with your own eyes whether the sums come out. It costs you nothing, and if it tells you to stay right where you are, well, that's an honest answer too, and worth the knowing. That's all I've got. Run your numbers, keep your cushion, and don't you dare let anybody tell you it's too late to start over. I'm 66 years old, and they know my name at the market. Take care of yourself.